It's Monty Python's take on Henry Kissinger, of course, with your crinkly hair and your glassy stare and your Machiavellian schemes. Well, Henry Kissinger just had open heart surgery. He's 91 years old, and he had open heart surgery. Can you imagine that? I didn't know he had a heart. He was the guy that Richard Nixon resigned to. I find that very interesting. We showed this at the beginning of the show, the resignation letter of Richard Nixon, 40 years ago yesterday. Dear Mr. Secretary, in other words, Henry Kissinger, I hereby resign the office of President of the United States. Sincerely, Richard Nixon. Why wouldn't he resign to the vice president or to the Speaker of the House, who's third in power? But he resigns to the guy who runs all these globalist organizations that we've seen for the last 40, 50 years. Henry Kissinger at Bilderberg, at all these different organizations. He's got his hand in the pie at every single one of those. And, we look at the crimes of Richard Nixon, as we pointed out earlier, this article from Outside the Beltway saying that public trust in government has hit new lows under Obama. They said prior to Watergate, the American public always trusted government. They thought that government could be trusted to do what was right always or most of the time. That is incredibly naive. But that was the situation up until Watergate. At that point, it went from more than half to 36%. Yet today, we see it has fallen to 13%, a record low from Obama, because I think people realize that as bad as Richard Nixon was, and I'm glad to see him go, there was a lot involved with him being taken out. Of course, you could always say that that was a coup that was organized by some people, but he really was a corrupt individual. Of course, his vice president was handing out stacks of cash in his office. But look at Nixon's legacy, in case you think that we should vote for Republicans over Democrats because they're not as bad as Democrats always. We've got the EPA that he created, and now we see 40 years later how they're overreaching, going against, in one particular instance, this case where they're trying to expand their powers. They've got a rancher in Montana. I don't even call him a rancher. He's got 8 acres, and he put a pond on his 8 acres, and the water in that pond doesn't cross his property lines. It's just stuff that he's collected from rainwater. Yet the EPA is now trying to regulate that. They're fining him $75,000 a day, this guy with 8 acres. And they then moved ahead after that. If that wasn't outrageous enough, they said, we're going to just take the money out of your bank account like the IRS does. Well, that agency, the EPA, was created by Richard Nixon. He gave us a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, which, again, was a massive overreach and intrusion of the federal government into the states to set speed limits. He gave us the war on drugs. He coined the term. Of course, it was Ronald Reagan and Ed Meese who really then turned it against the end users and started filling up our prisons to the extent that we had to let violent criminals out on the streets in order to keep these guys in with their mandatory minimums for having marijuana possession. He also, Richard Nixon, began transforming and transferring our economy to China, opening up China. We hear that as being a great initiative of Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon. And then, of course, there's wage and price controls that he put in. So when you think that everything is solved by getting a Republican, think again. We even had this article that came up earlier about Mitch McConnell and how his wife sits on the board of a group that is working to kill the coal industry. It's not just Obama who says, if you want to build a coal plant, you can do that, but it's just going to bankrupt you. No, it's the wife of the minority leader who has already defeated a conservative opponent in the primaries. So now they've got full spectrum dominance. You can either vote for a Democrat or you can vote for a Democrat, Mitch McConnell. He says that he presents himself as defender of Kentucky's coal mining industry, and yet his wife, former Secretary of Labor Elaine Chao, sits on the board of directors of Bloomberg Philanthropies. She sits on the board of a Bloomberg organization that has put $50 million into Sierra Club's Beyond Coal initiative, an advocacy effort with the expressed goal of killing the coal industry. This is coming from Yahoo. This is being reported on Yahoo News. Now, they want to retire, this is their specific goal, they want to retire a third of the nation's 500 coal plants by 2020 and replace the majority of retired coal plants, keeping coal in the ground of Appalachia. And so he talks about, and Bloomberg talks about how coal is a self-inflicted public health risk. Well, you know what? You are taking away our only way to be self-sufficient in energy, or perhaps our best way to be self-sufficient in energy. I understand that there's applications for solar, and I like solar power because it's a way to get off of the grid, and I like to see the decentralization of power. But as far as the grid goes, these renewables like solar power, like wind, cannot provide the steady state levels of power that you need without massive amounts of storage, and we don't have that storage technology yet. They are too intermittent. So you got to have something, or else you're going to have no power. If you don't have coal, you're going to have no power, or you're going to be paying much, much, much more for your energy than you can afford. That's what's behind this, and of course we see that now with Mitch McConnell. Good example of Richard Nixon. And yet, when we look at impeachment, what is it that we're talking about? We're talking about getting rid of corruption. It was earlier in the week that we had this article that was up by Colonel Pete Martino talking about corruption, how we had to purge people. And if you go back to the beginning of the Obama administration, back to 2009, there was a judge out of Houston, and this judge was quoted in this article by Colonel Pete Martino. He said, "Hopefully we won't have someone like Judge Samuel Kent, who went to prison on charges that he abused his power and lied in order to cover up sexual assaults on 2 women who worked for him. He told one of them, quote, 'I am the government. I'm the Lion King. It's good to be the king. I'm the Emperor of Galveston, the man wearing the horned hat and guiding the ship.'" Now, let me tell you what happened to that lunatic, okay? He was convicted in criminal court, but he only served 33 months. This was 2009. Obama had just taken office. The Congress was so reluctant to impeach this guy that they finally did it. He sent a letter of resignation once. They didn't accept the letter of resignation. They eventually did impeach him after he was already in jail. They finally got around to doing it. And then it went to the Senate. The Senate then visited this judge in jail. He offered a second letter of resignation, and they accepted that and then went back to the House and said, now that we've accepted his resignation, let's just stop the impeachment thing right now. And it ended. So he only served 33 months, and when they accepted his resignation, what they did was allow him to now draw a retirement plan for the rest of his life. That was what was at stake, impeachment versus retirement. That's the level of corruption that we have in the government, that they look out for their own no matter what. They tolerate that kind of criminal activity no matter what, and that goes all the way back to 2009. So when Boehner says he's not going to go after the president, I'm not surprised. It isn't because the president hasn't done things that exactly line up, as we pointed out time and time again, as many people pointed out, exactly line up with the articles of impeachment with Richard Nixon. You know, Richard Nixon was never accused of doing a burglary. What he was accused of was covering up the criminal actions of his subordinates, thereby making those criminal actions his own. He covered up and blocked investigations into criminal actions. And we've had the Obama administration do this over and over and over again. Yet they will not impeach him. They won't even impeach a delusional judge who brags about being the king, the emperor of Galveston and the Lion King, and saying it's good to be the king, essentially quoting Mel Brooks out of the History of the World. You know, he did the Louis the 16th thing. They won't even impeach a guy like that. So how do we think they're going to move against someone that is really powerful like the president? Now, I want to switch and go back to ISIS, and we're going to do that right after the break. Of course, we had Alex Jones breaking down for us live in the last hour, as well as with a special report, what's really going on in ISIS. And I want to take a call from Tom in Dallas, and he's talking about how Marines have been training ISIS over there. So we're going to be right back. Stay tuned with that call.
I've always believed in nutrition and herbs. Super Male Vitality was developed to activate your body's own natural processes instead of using synthetic chemicals, sourced from powerful organic herbs, harvested around the planet, and then concentrated for maximum potency.
I just received my Male Vitality about 3 days ago, and I must say, that is good stuff.
After consulting top doctors, nutritionists, pharmacists, and others, we have developed what I believe is the ultimate non-GMO organic Super Male Vitality Vitality formula. Super Male Vitality by InfoWars Life is so powerful that I only take half the recommended dose.
I jump out of bed ready to fight these criminals every day. I look forward to waking up and taking my Super Male Vitality and getting the day started.
It's not just the Super Male Vitality. All the products at InfoWarsLife.com are simply amazing. Visit InfoWarsLife.com today to secure your Super Male Vitality and other powerful products from InfoWars Life.
Hi, I'm Dr. Edward Group. It took me 20 years of searching the globe to find the deposit of the highest purity iodine available. The new Survival Shield X2 is mined from 7,000 to 10,000 feet below the earth in pristine, environmentally clean conditions. The iodine crystals we use are extracted from an ancient 300 million plus year old deposit deep in the earth. It's the strongest nascent iodine on the market today. It delivers 650 micrograms per drop. Experience the new formula. Experience the ancient purity. Shield your family. Survival Shield X2. Available now at InfoWarsLife.com.
X2.